Montana Territory, 1875. Victoria Parker pulled her shawl tighter against the biting autumn wind as she stood on the porch of her father's, no, her ranch house. At 22, she had never imagined she'd be facing the vast Montana wilderness alone. 3 months since her father's passing, and the weight of running the Silverbow Ranch pressed down on her shoulders like the heavy clouds threatening rain above. Her honey-blonde hair whipped across her face as she surveyed the property. 800 acres of prime grazing land nestled against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Land that men twice her size and 3 times her experience coveted with predatory eyes. Land that neighboring rancher Emmett Caldwell had already offered to take off her hands for a fair price. Fair to him, perhaps. Victoria's green calico dress fluttered around her ankles as she descended the porch steps. The ranch hands her father had employed had dwindled to just 2 elderly men who remained out of loyalty to her father's memory. Not nearly enough to manage the approaching winter and the threats that seemed to multiply each day. No one survives these mountains alone, her father had told her on his deathbed. Especially not a woman. The words had stung, but as each day passed, Victoria feared the truth in them more. The frontier demanded partnerships, alliances, and strength in numbers. A woman alone was seen as either prey or property. That morning, Victoria had discovered her fence line cut in 3 places and cattle missing. It wasn't the first incident, and she knew with bone-deep certainty it wouldn't be the last. "Miss Parker," called old Samuel from the barn. "Riders coming." Victoria's heart stuttered. She straightened her spine and lifted her chin. Vulnerability was a luxury she couldn't afford, not out here where weakness invited destruction. 3 riders approached down the long path to the ranch house. The man in front rode tall on a chestnut stallion, his broad shoulders squared against the wind. As they drew closer, Victoria was surprised to see how young the leader was, perhaps only a few years older than herself. His dark blonde hair caught the sunlight, and despite the trail dust on his denim shirt and worn leather vest, there was a quiet dignity in his bearing. "Miss Parker," he called, removing his hat as he approached. "The name's Adam O'Brien. These are my brothers, Michael and James. We heard you might be looking for hands." Victoria studied them carefully. The eldest couldn't be more than 26, with clear blue eyes that met hers directly. His face was clean-shaven save for the lightest stubble, evidence of days on the trail. His brothers shared his coloring but lacked the quiet authority that seemed to emanate from him. "Who told you that?" she asked, suspicion edging her voice. "Sheriff Collins in town," Adam replied. "Said you lost most of your crew after your father passed. Said you might need help, especially with Caldwell pushing boundaries." Victoria's fingers tightened around her shawl. "I can't afford to hire 3 men for the winter." Adam dismounted, keeping a respectful distance. "We're not looking for much, ma'am. Just fair work for fair board. We've been driving cattle north from Texas, but with winter coming, we need somewhere to set down roots until spring." "Texas men," Victoria said, unable to hide her wariness. Tales of wild Texas cowboys had reached even Montana's remote valleys. Adam's expression remained steady. "Yes, ma'am. But my brothers and I, we're not the carousing type. We were raised to respect honest work and those who provide it." There was something in his eyes, a steadiness that reminded her of her father. And yet, trusting strangers in this territory was how people ended up dead. Or worse. "Miss Parker," Adam continued, seeming to sense her hesitation, "I understand your caution. But winter's coming fast, and from what we saw riding in, your north fence line needs mending, your cattle are scattered, and you're down to 2 men who, begging your pardon, look like they should be rocking on a porch rather than breaking horses." Victoria felt a flush of indignation, followed swiftly by the cold reality of her situation. She was one bad storm away from disaster. "I'll hire you on trial," she said finally. 2 weeks. If I don't like what I see, you move on before the first snow." Adam nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. "That's fair. We'll earn our keep." Victoria watched the brothers ride toward the bunkhouse with Samuel. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just altered the course of her life irrevocably. For better or worse remained to be seen. Adam O'Brien had learned early that attachment was the quickest route to heartache on the frontier. At 26, he'd already buried his parents, lost a sister to fever, and watched good men die over disputes that seemed meaningless in retrospect. The West didn't tolerate sentimentality. It rewarded vigilance and self-reliance. Yet something about Victoria Parker's fierce determination stirred something he'd thought long dormant. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a practical braid, but tendrils escaped to frame a face that combined delicate features with a stubborn chin. She stood like someone accustomed to being underestimated and determined to prove the world wrong. "You're awful quiet," Michael said as they settled into the sparse bunkhouse. "Having second thoughts?" Adam shook his head. "Just thinking this place needs more work than expected." James, the youngest at 22, laughed. "You mean the ranch or its owner?" Adam shot him a warning glance. "Show respect. We're guests here. Hired hands," Michael corrected. "And temporary ones at that." But Adam had seen the signs others might miss. The quality of the barn construction, the carefully maintained ledgers in the ranch office, the strategic layout of the property. John Parker had built something worth preserving, and his daughter was fighting with everything she had to keep it. Something in him responded to that fight, recognized it as his own. "Let's get some rest," Adam said. "Tomorrow we prove our worth." The following days established a cautious rhythm. The O'Brien brothers rose before dawn, working from first light until dusk. They mended fences, rounded up scattered cattle, repaired the leaking roof on the storage shed, and broke 2 wild mustangs that had been causing trouble in the north pasture. Victoria watched them closely, particularly Adam. Unlike most men she'd encountered since her father's death, he didn't speak to her with condescension or unwanted familiarity. He reported problems directly, offered solutions, and deferred to her decisions with the same respect he might show a male employer. On the 5th day, Victoria rode out to check their progress on the fence line. She found Adam alone, hammering a post into the rocky ground. His shirt darkened with sweat despite the cool autumn air. "Your brothers?" she asked, dismounting. "Tracking strays in the East Valley," he replied, pausing his work. Samuel thought he saw signs of rustling. Victoria's stomach tightened. "Rustlers or Caldwell's men? Is there a difference?" Adam asked, a hint of wry humor in his voice. Despite herself, Victoria smiled. "Not much of one." He drove the post with one final, powerful stroke. "Miss Parker, I don't mean to overstep, but I've been studying your operation." "Have you now?" she asked, wariness returning. "You have good water access, prime grazing land, and healthy stock. But your security is compromised in at least 6 places I've found." Victoria crossed her arms. "And what would you suggest, Mr. O'Brien?" "More men, for one. Strategic patrols. And," he hesitated, "and an alliance. The Caldwells of the world prey on isolation. They count on it." The truth in his words stung. "Alliances require trust, Mr. O'Brien. Trust is in short supply out here." Adam met her gaze directly. "Yes, ma'am. But so is survival without it." Before Victoria could respond, a shot echoed across the valley. They both turned toward the sound, just as James came galloping over the ridge. "Adam," he shouted. "Caldwell's men caught Michael checking the east boundary. They're holding him at gunpoint, claiming he's trespassing." Victoria saw Adam's expression harden. "Get back to the house," he told her. "This is my land, my fight," she replied, already swinging back onto her horse. "Then we fight it together," Adam said, mounting his own stallion in one fluid motion. They rode hard toward the east boundary, the wind carrying the scent of impending snow. Victoria felt fear coursing through her veins, but something else rode alongside it. A fierce determination bolstered by the knowledge that, for once, she wasn't facing danger alone. The confrontation at the boundary line changed everything. Caldwell's men, 4 rough-looking cowboys with whiskey on their breath, had Michael on his knees, a rifle pressed to his back. Their leader, a man called Decker, grinned when Victoria rode up. "Well, if it ain't the little lady rancher," he drawled. "Come to rescue your hired hand. He's on Parker land," Victoria said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're the trespassers here." Decker spat tobacco juice. "Boundaries get mighty confusing without a man to maintain them properly. Mr. Caldwell's just concerned about your welfare, being all alone out here." "She's not alone," Adam said, his voice quiet but carrying a deadly edge. Decker's eyes narrowed. 3 drifters don't make much difference, O'Brien. Winter's coming. Accidents happen. Miss Parker would be better off accepting Mr. Caldwell's generous offer." "The only offer I'm interested in," Victoria replied. is the one where you release my hand and get off my property." Tension crackled between them until finally, Decker gestured for his men to back away from Michael. "This ain't over. Caldwell wants this land. What Caldwell wants, Caldwell gets." As they rode off, Victoria felt her hands trembling on the reins. Adam noticed and moved his horse closer. "You handled that well," he said quietly. Victoria gave a shaky laugh. "I was terrified." "Courage isn't about not feeling fear," Adam said. "It's about what you do despite it." That evening, after Michael had been tended to, his injuries amounting to bruises and a split lip, Victoria invited the O'Brien brothers to dinner in the main house. It was the first time she'd opened her home to anyone since her father's passing. Over a simple meal of venison stew and cornbread, Victoria found herself studying Adam. His hands were calloused from work, but his manners were unexpectedly refined. He spoke little but listened intently, his eyes crinkling at the corners when his brothers told stories of their journey north. "Why Montana?" she asked finally. "Texas cowboys usually prefer the Kansas herding routes." A shadow passed over Adam's face. "We had trouble in Texas. The kind that follows you." "What kind of trouble?" Victoria pressed, needing to know what might be trailing these men to her doorstep. Adam hesitated, then set down his fork. 2 years ago, our family ranch was taken by a man named Farrell. He had political connections, forged documents. When our father contested the claim, Farrell's men shot him down in front of us. Victoria's breath caught. James stared at his plate, and Michael's jaw tightened. "We tried to fight through legal channels," Adam continued. "But Farrell owned the local judge. When we wouldn't leave, they burned our home. Our mother and sister were inside." "Adam," Michael warned. "Miss Parker deserves the truth," Adam said firmly. "We tracked Farrell and his men. There was a confrontation. 3 of his men didn't survive it." The room fell silent. Victoria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the windows. "The law in Texas would call it self-defense," Adam continued. "But Farrell's influence runs deep. We've been moving north ever since, looking for somewhere to start over." Victoria studied his face, searching for signs of deception and finding none. "I'm sorry about your family," she said finally. "Truly." Adam nodded once, acceptance rather than dismissal of her sympathy. "We don't bring trouble lightly to another's door, Miss Parker. If you want us to move on after what I've told you, we will." Victoria looked around the table, at the 3 brothers who had already done more for her ranch in a week than others had in months, at the empty chair where her father once sat, at the home she was desperately trying to hold on to alone. "My father always said you judge a man by his actions, not his past," she said carefully. "So far, your actions have given me no reason to doubt you." The relief on Adam's face was subtle but unmistakable. Victoria realized with sudden clarity that he had been expecting rejection, had been prepared for it. How many doors had closed to them as they traveled north? As the meal concluded and the brothers prepared to return to the bunkhouse, Victoria caught Adam's arm. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said quietly. "Not many would have. Not many have as much to lose as you do," he replied, his voice equally low. "I respect that." Their eyes held for a moment too long, and Victoria felt something shift between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Both fighting against loss, both determined to reclaim what had been taken. "Good night, Miss Parker," Adam said finally, settling his hat on his head. "Victoria," she corrected impulsively. "My friends call me Victoria." His smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines of frontier hardship. "Good night, Victoria." As she watched him walk away, Victoria acknowledged a troubling truth. Adam O'Brien was becoming dangerous to her in ways that had nothing to do with his past and everything to do with her future. The weeks passed, and the trial period Victoria had established came and went without discussion of the O'Brien brothers moving on. With their help, the ranch began to thrive despite the encroaching winter. Cattle were rounded up from distant pastures, hay stored for the cold months, buildings reinforced against snow. More importantly, word spread that the Parker Ranch was no longer defenseless. Caldwell's men still watched from a distance, but direct confrontations ceased. Victoria began to sleep through the night again, the knot of constant anxiety in her stomach slowly loosening. With security came the space to notice other things, like how Adam's eyes followed her when she moved around the ranch yard, or how their hands sometimes brushed when passing tools, sending unexpected warmth through her fingers. She found herself taking more care with her appearance, even as she told herself it was foolish to do so for a hired hand who would likely move on with spring. One crisp November afternoon, Victoria rode out to check on a pregnant heifer in the south pasture. She found Adam already there, gently stroking the animal's flank as she labored. "She's having trouble," he explained as Victoria dismounted. "The calf is turned wrong." Together they worked in the growing dusk, Adam's strong arms guiding the calf, while Victoria soothed the distressed mother. When the calf finally emerged, healthy, wet, and blinking, they shared a moment of breathless triumph. "You've done this before," Adam observed, watching as Victoria efficiently checked the calf for any problems. "Many times. My father insisted I learn every aspect of ranching." She smiled at the memory. He said, "Just because you're a girl doesn't mean your brain works any different when it comes to cattle." He sounds like a wise man. He was. Victoria's smile faded. "Sometimes I wonder if he'd be disappointed in how I've managed since he's been gone." Adam leaned back on his heels, studying her. "From what I've seen, you've kept this place running against odds that would have broken most men, let alone a woman," she finished, a hint of challenge in her voice. "Anyone," Adam corrected gently. "Man or woman. That takes a special kind of strength." Victoria looked away, uncomfortable with the admiration in his gaze. "We should get back. It'll be dark soon." As they rode home side by side, the setting sun casting long shadows across the valley, Victoria found herself asking, "Do you ever think about going back to Texas? When it's safe?" Adam was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "Texas stopped being home the day we buried our mother and sister," he finally said. "Home isn't just a place. It's where you feel you belong." "And where do you belong, Adam O'Brien?" The question slipped out before Victoria could reconsider its implications. He looked at her then, the fading sunlight catching in his eyes. "I'm starting to think I might be finding that out." The moment hung between them, fragile as frost on a window pane. Then Adam cleared his throat and pointed to dark clouds building on the horizon. "Storm's coming. We should hurry." The snow began that night, gentle at first, then building to a howling blizzard that confined everyone to the ranch buildings for 3 days. Victoria found herself pacing the house, restless and oddly bereft without the daily interactions with Adam and his brothers that had become so familiar. On the evening of the 3rd day, when the storm finally began to ease, a pounding at her door startled her. She opened it to find Adam, snow crusting his coat and hat, his face grim. "The north barn roof collapsed under the snow," he said without preamble. "The yearlings are trapped inside." Victoria grabbed her coat and gloves. "Let me get my boots." Together they trudged through knee-deep snow to the damaged barn, where Michael and James were already working to clear debris. For hours they labored in the bitter cold, freeing panicked animals and shoring up what remained of the structure. When the last yearling had been moved to safety, Victoria found herself alone with Adam in the damaged barn, checking for any animals they might have missed. "I think that's all of them," she said, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. She turned to find Adam standing very still, watching her with an expression that made her heart stutter. "You're bleeding," he said softly. Victoria looked down to see a tear in her sleeve, a small cut on her forearm, seeping blood. "It's nothing. Must have caught it on a nail." Adam moved closer, taking her arm gently in his hands. The sudden warmth of his touch through her torn sleeve sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "It should be cleaned," he said, his voice low. "Later," she replied, suddenly unable to look away from his face. In the lantern light, with snow melting in his hair and concern in his eyes, he was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. "Victoria," he said, her name like a question. And then, as if some invisible barrier between them had finally crumbled, his lips were on hers, tentative at first, then with growing certainty as she responded. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against the solid warmth of his chest. Victoria felt herself yielding, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, her body melting into his as if she'd been shaped for this purpose. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality rushed back. Victoria stepped away, her fingertips touching her lips in wonder and dismay. "I shouldn't have done that," Adam said, regret clouding his features. "You're my employer. I had no right." "No," Victoria interrupted. I wanted you to. The admission cost her, but she couldn't bear to see the self-recrimination in his eyes. Adam ran a hand through his snow-dampened hair. Victoria, I'm a man with a dangerous past and an uncertain future. You deserve better than that. Don't tell me what I deserve, she replied, a flash of the same determination that had kept her ranch alive sparking in her eyes. I've had enough of men deciding what's best for me. Adam's expression softened. You're right. I'm sorry. He hesitated, then added, but my past is real. The danger to my brothers and me is real. And now, it could extend to you. The weight of his words settled between them. Victoria knew he was right to be cautious. Attachment in the West was risky at best, deadly at worst. Yet something in her rebelled at the thought of retreating to safety, of denying the connection that had been building between them since the day he rode onto her land. We should get back to the house, she said finally. Your brothers will be wondering where we are. Adam nodded, the moment slipping away. But as they walked back through the snow, their shoulders occasionally brushing, Victoria knew that something fundamental had changed. A line had been crossed that could not be redrawn. That night, lying awake in her bed listening to the wind, Victoria confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with Adam O'Brien, and it terrified her. The weeks following the blizzard brought a tentative courtship. Nothing was declared openly, but the ranch hands and Adam's brothers exchanged knowing glances when Victoria and Adam found reasons to work together, their conversations extending beyond ranch business into personal histories and quiet dreams. She learned that he'd wanted to be a lawyer before his family's tragedy had set him on a different path. He discovered her secret passion for astronomy, inherited from a mother who had taught her the constellations before passing away when Victoria was 12. I used to think they were watching over me, she confessed one evening as they sat on the porch, the winter sky blazing with stars. My mother, and now my father. Adam's hand found hers in the darkness. Maybe they are. Christmas approached, bringing with it a rare calm. Even Caldwell seemed to be respecting the season's peace, his men conspicuously absent from Parker boundaries. Victoria began to hope that perhaps he had found easier targets for his expansion. She decided to host a proper Christmas dinner, inviting not only the O'Briens, but also the remaining ranch hands and several neighboring families who had shown kindness after her father's death. It would be the first real celebration at the ranch since she had become its mistress. The day before Christmas Eve, Victoria rode into town for supplies, accompanied by Michael O'Brien. The small settlement was festive despite the harsh winter, with pine boughs decorating storefronts and children sledding down the main street's gentle slope. As Victoria emerged from the general store, arms laden with packages, she nearly collided with a tall man in an expensive Eastern-cut coat. "Miss Parker," he said, tipping his hat. What a delightful surprise. Victoria felt her spine stiffen. "Mr. Caldwell." Emmett Caldwell smiled, his teeth too white against his weathered face. At 50, he had the confident bearing of a man accustomed to getting his way. "Christmas shopping, I see. How charming." "If you'll excuse me," Victoria said, attempting to step around him. Caldwell blocked her path. "I heard you'd taken on new hands. Texas boys, they say. Interesting choice." The implied threat sent a chill through Victoria. "My staffing decisions are my own business, Mr. Caldwell. Everything in this valley is my business, Miss Parker." His voice remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened, especially when it involves men with wanted posters circulating in 3 states. Victoria's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." Caldwell's smile widened. "No? Ask your foreman about the Farrow Ranch massacre. Ask him what happens to those who shelter murderers." He tipped his hat again. "Merry Christmas, Miss Parker. Enjoy it while you can." Michael appeared at her side as Caldwell walked away. What did he want? Victoria's mind raced. "We need to get back to the ranch. Now." The ride home passed in tense silence. Victoria's thoughts whirled between disbelief, fear, and a growing sense of betrayal. Adam had mentioned conflict, self-defense, not massacre. Had he lied about the extent of his past? Or was Caldwell manipulating her, driving a wedge between her and the men who had become her strongest allies? She found Adam in the barn, repairing a saddle. When he looked up and saw her expression, he set his work aside immediately. "What's wrong?" "I need you to tell me the truth," Victoria said, her voice tight. "All of it. About Texas. About Farrell." Understanding dawned in Adam's eyes. "You spoke to someone." Caldwell. He mentioned wanted posters. A massacre. Adam's jaw tightened. Here? In Montana? Answer me, Adam. What really happened in Texas? He sank onto a hay bale, running a hand over his face. I told you the truth about Farrell taking our land, killing our father. What I didn't tell you was how many of his men died when we confronted him. How many? Victoria asked, her throat dry. 7, including Farrell himself. The number hung in the air between them. 7 men. 7 lives. It wasn't how we planned it, Adam continued, his voice hollow. We just wanted justice, evidence to take to the federal marshal. But Farrell's men opened fire. James was hit. Something in me broke. He looked up at her, his eyes haunted. I've relived that day 1,000 times, wondering if there was another way. Victoria felt tears stinging her eyes. Not for the men who had died, but for the burden Adam had carried. Why didn't you tell me everything from the beginning? Because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now. And how am I looking at you? Like you're seeing a stranger. Someone dangerous. Victoria realized with a start that he was right. She had stepped back, was standing with her arms wrapped protectively around herself. Consciously, she forced her arms to her sides. Caldwell knows who you are, she said. He as much as threatened to expose you. Adam nodded grimly. We'll leave. Today. I won't bring this to your doorstep. No. The word escaped Victoria with surprising force. That's exactly what Caldwell wants. To drive you away and leave me vulnerable again. Victoria, no, she repeated, moving closer to him. I'm tired of men deciding my fate. My father, Caldwell, even you. This is my ranch, my home, my choice. And I choose to stand and fight. Adam stared at her, disbelief giving way to something like wonder. Do you understand what you're saying? If Caldwell exposes us, you could be charged as an accomplice. You could lose everything. Victoria took his hands, feeling the calluses that matched her own. I was losing everything anyway, before you came. Piece by piece, day by day. You and your brothers gave me hope again. She squeezed his fingers. Now I'm offering the same to you. Stay. Fight. We'll face Caldwell together. Adam searched her face, looking for hesitation or doubt. Finding none, he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. You are the bravest person I've ever known, he whispered. Victoria held him tight, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her chest. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that whatever came, lawmen or land barons, snow or drought, she would rather face it with Adam at her side than safety without him. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and renewed tension. Victoria proceeded with her dinner plans despite Adam's concerns, refusing to let Caldwell's threats darken the holiday. The ranch house glowed with lamplight and pine-scented warmth as guests arrived in sleighs and on horseback. The evening progressed with food, music from James's harmonica, and the kind of laughter Victoria hadn't heard in the house since her father's death. She moved among her guests in a dress of deep green velvet, a gift from her father the previous Christmas that she had never found occasion to wear. Adam couldn't take his eyes off her. He had shaved clean and borrowed a proper shirt from one of the hands, and Victoria felt a flutter in her stomach whenever their gazes met across the room. For a few precious hours, the shadow of Caldwell's threats receded, allowing them the illusion of normalcy. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Sheriff Collins, who had accepted Victoria's invitation with surprise and pleasure, approached Adam in a quiet corner. O'Brien, he said, his voice low. Could I have a word? Victoria, noticing the exchange, moved casually within earshot, pretending to arrange pine boughs on the mantel. I had a wire from the Texas Rangers yesterday, Collins said. Seems they're looking for 3 brothers in connection with some trouble down south. Adam's face remained impassive, but Victoria saw his shoulders tense. Is that so? Collins nodded. Curiously, the description matches you and your brothers pretty close. He sipped his coffee. Thing is, I also had a letter from Judge Hammond in Austin a few months back. Old friend of mine. He mentioned a land dispute gone bad. Mentioned a man named Farrell who had a reputation for forgery and intimidation. Mentioned that federal authorities were investigating him posthumously for land fraud across 3 counties. Adam said nothing, waiting. Frontier justice is a complicated thing. Collins continued conversationally. Sometimes the law on paper and the law in practice don't align as neatly as they should. What are you saying, Sheriff? Collins set down his cup. I'm saying that as long as there's no trouble in my jurisdiction, I tend to judge a man by what I see, not what I hear. He glanced toward Victoria. And what I see is a lady who was in dire straits before you arrived and is now standing tall again. That counts for something in my book. Relief washed over Adam's features. Thank you. Collins nodded once. Don't make me regret it. He tipped his hat to Victoria, who had abandoned all pretense of not listening. Miss Parker, a lovely evening. Your father would be proud. After the last guest had departed and the house settled into quiet, Victoria found Adam on the porch, staring at the star-filled sky. You heard? He asked without turning. Yes. She moved to stand beside him. It seems we have an ally in Sheriff Collins. Adam's laugh held little humor. For now, but Caldwell won't stop. If he can't use the law against us, he'll find another way. Victoria leaned against the porch rail. My father always said that men like Caldwell can't imagine anyone standing against them because they've spent so long buying or bullying their way forward. Your father was a wise man. Yes, he was. Victoria turned to face Adam. He also said that the most valuable thing in the West isn't gold or land. It's knowing who you can trust with your life. She took a deep breath. I trust you, Adam. With my ranch, with my future, with my heart. Adam's eyes widened. In the moonlight, his face looked younger, the hard lines of vigilance temporarily softened. Victoria, the crack of a rifle split the night. Adam instinctively pulled Victoria down as a bullet splintered the porch post where she had been standing. Inside, he shouted, covering her body with his own as they crawled toward the door. More shots rang out, breaking windows and thudding into the wooden siding of the house. They tumbled inside to find Michael and James already moving, rifles in hand. The elderly ranch hands huddled in the kitchen, one clutching a bleeding arm. Caldwell's men, Michael said grimly. At least 6 of them. They rode up shooting. Adam's face hardened into the expression Victoria had seen the day they confronted Decker at the boundary line. Determined, dangerous, deadly. Get upstairs, he told Victoria. Stay away from the windows. This is my home, she replied, grabbing her father's shotgun from above the fireplace. I'll defend it beside you. Before Adam could argue, another volley of shots peppered the house. The O'Briens took up positions at different windows, returning fire strategically. They're trying to pin us down, James called. There's movement at the barn. Victoria felt cold fear grip her heart. They're going to burn us out. Adam met her eyes across the room, understanding immediately. It was the same tactic that had killed his mother and sister. Not this time, he said, his voice deadly calm. Michael, James, keep them occupied from the front. Victoria and I will circle around back and flank them. It's too dangerous, Michael protested. It's our only chance, Adam countered. If they set fire to the house, we're all dead anyway. Victoria led Adam through a cellar door that opened onto the back of the property. They crouched in the shadows, watching as 2 of Caldwell's men approached the barn with torches. Can you hit the one on the left? Adam whispered, drawing his revolver. Victoria raised her shotgun, steadying it against her shoulder. Yes. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Their shots rang out simultaneously. Both men fell. The remaining attackers, now caught in crossfire between the house and their position, began to retreat. They're running, James shouted from inside. But victory was short-lived. As the riders regrouped at the edge of the property, Victoria spotted a familiar figure among them. Caldwell, she breathed. He came himself. Emmett Caldwell's voice carried across the yard. Parker, O'Brien, this ends tonight. Send the woman out unharmed, and the rest of you might live till morning. Adam's laugh was harsh. He's desperate. He knows the sheriff suspects him. What do we do? Victoria asked, adrenaline making her voice shake. We end this, Adam said, his eyes never leaving the distant figures. But not his way. With calm precision, Adam outlined a plan. As Victoria listened, she felt a strange clarity descend. This moment, this confrontation, had been inevitable since her father's death, perhaps even before. Under cover of darkness, James and Michael slipped out to circle behind Caldwell's position. Victoria and Adam would create a distraction, drawing attention to the front of the house. The ranch hands would maintain fire from the windows, giving the impression that everyone remained inside. Be careful, Victoria said as they prepared to separate. I've only just found you. I'm not ready to lose you. Adam pulled her close, his kiss fierce and brief. You won't. I promise. The night exploded into chaos. Victoria and Adam fired from the cover of the woodpile, drawing Caldwell's men toward the front of the property. When shots suddenly erupted from behind them, the attackers panicked, caught in a trap of their own making. In the confusion, Victoria saw Caldwell break away, heading not toward escape, but toward the house itself. Adam, she called, pointing. Together they raced after him, reaching the porch just as Caldwell kicked in the front door. They found him in the parlor, overturning furniture, frantically searching. Looking for something? Victoria asked, her shotgun leveled at his chest. Caldwell spun, his own pistol raised. Parker's deed, he spat. I know he had evidence of my earlier claims. Proof that could ruin me. My father's papers were filed with the land office in Helena, Victoria said, realization dawning. This was never just about expanding your ranch, was it? You were afraid my father had discovered your forgeries. Your father was a fool who didn't know when to look the other way, Caldwell snarled. Like father, like daughter. His finger tightened on the trigger. Adam lunged forward just as the gun fired, the bullet grazing his shoulder instead of striking Victoria. They crashed to the floor together as Caldwell turned to flee. He made it as far as the porch before Sheriff Collins's voice rang out from the yard. That's far enough, Caldwell. Victoria and Adam stumbled outside to find Collins and a group of deputies surrounding the remaining attackers. James and Michael emerged from the shadows, rifles still ready. Sheriff, Caldwell blustered. These people attacked my men. They're harboring fugitives from Texas justice. Collins dismounted calmly. Funny thing, Emmett. I received a wire today from the federal marshal in Austin. Seems they've been building a case against you for land fraud stretching up through Wyoming. They're mighty interested in your connection to a man named Farrell. The color drained from Caldwell's face. As for Texas justice, Collins continued, the Rangers have officially closed their investigation into the O'Brien brothers. Self-defense against a known criminal conspiracy. He nodded toward Adam. You're clear, son. Victoria felt her knees weaken with relief. Adam's arm tightened around her waist, supporting her. This isn't over, Caldwell hissed as deputies cuffed his wrists. Yes, Adam said quietly. It is. As dawn broke over the valley, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Victoria stood on her damaged porch surveying the aftermath. Windows would need replacing, bullet holes patching, fences mending. But for the first time since her father's death, the work ahead felt like building rather than merely surviving. Adam joined her, his shoulder bandaged where Caldwell's bullet had grazed him. The sheriff says they found documents in Caldwell's saddlebags. Land deeds, forged papers. He was planning to flee the territory. Instead, he'll face federal charges, Victoria said, satisfaction warming her voice. And his ranch. According to Collins, it will likely be divided and sold to recover what he stole from others. Adam hesitated, then added, it includes the property that borders your north pasture. The water rights you've been fighting over for years. Victoria turned to face him, the implications sinking in. My father always wanted that land. He said with it, the Silverbow could become one of the largest operations in the territory. It could, Adam agreed, with the right management. Something in his tone made Victoria study his face. What are you saying? Adam took her hands in his. Victoria, when I came here, I was running from my past. I never expected to find a future. His voice grew husky. I never expected to find you. Victoria's heart pounded as Adam dropped to one knee in the snow, still holding her hands. I have nothing to offer but myself, he said. My hands, my heart, my promise to protect what you've built and help it grow. If you'll have me. Tears sprang to Victoria's eyes. Adam O'Brien, are you proposing to me on Christmas morning with bullet holes in my house and your shoulder bleeding through its bandage? A slow smile spread across his face. Yes, ma'am, I believe I am. Victoria laughed, joy bubbling up from a place she had thought long dry. Then my answer is yes. 1,000 times yes. Adam rose and gathered her in his arms, his kiss a promise of all the days to come. Over his shoulder, Victoria saw Michael and James watching from the yard, their grins wide and approving. Even the old ranch hands had emerged to witness the moment, handkerchiefs discreetly dabbing at eyes. Merry Christmas, Victoria Parker, Adam whispered against her hair. Almost Victoria O'Brien, she corrected, feeling the rightness of the name on her tongue. As they turned toward the house, arm in arm, Victoria looked out over the ranch, her father's legacy, now her own, soon to be shared. The morning sun glinted off the fresh snow, making the whole valley sparkle like diamonds. In the distance, cattle moved peacefully across white fields, and beyond them, the mountains stood eternal guard. This land had nearly broken her. Instead, it had led her to strength she never knew she possessed and love she hadn't dared to imagine. The frontier might be harsh, but it rewarded those who refused to surrender to its demands, those who found in its very harshness the reason to hold tighter to what mattered most. Adam's arm around her waist was warm and solid, his promise as tangible as the land beneath their feet. Victoria had given her heart, and in return, she had gained not just protection for her ranch, but a partnership that would make it stronger than it had ever been. Together, they stepped across the threshold into their future, a future as vast and promising as the Montana sky above them.